We are on an incredible journey together, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the power of healing. To extend the reach and impact of the You Are Not Your Trauma movement, we've launched the Give 5 to Change Lives campaign. With just $5, you can contribute to developing invaluable resources like our upcoming You Are Not Your Trauma app, healing journal, and expanded podcast content. Every dollar and every share contributes to helping bring healing and hope to more people. We invite you to join this movement. Visit giving.youarenotyourtrauma.com to contribute. Together, we can change lives one heart at a time.
So I tried to quit school 3 times. Once I was in the nursing program, and everybody kept telling me the same thing. You have a great heart. You're going to be a great nurse. You can't quit. And they literally did not let me withdraw. And at that point, I had 3 kids that I was raising. And so I kept going and I didn't give up. And fast forward, a long time has gone by. My brother passed away 13 years ago now. And last year I was turning 40. And it got to the point where I started doing all the things I wanted to do. And I went on this forgiveness journey.
Welcome to the You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, a show that reminds you that you are not alone, your experiences matter, and you are not defined by what you've been through. Each week, you will hear from the host and invited guests who have either personal or professional experience with trauma. They will share their stories and strategies for overcoming past wounds and beginning the journey toward healing and wholeness. Now, here's your host, a gifted speaker, author, coach, and entrepreneur, Harriet M. Harris.
Welcome to a brand new episode of You Are Not Your Trauma, the podcast that brings hope, healing, and inspiration to those who have experienced life's most challenging moments. I'm your host, Harriet M. Harris, and I am so glad that you're here today. I hope that this show is an important part of your healing journey. Today, we're tackling a heavy and somewhat unpopular topic: forgiveness. It is that bridge between holding on to hurt and stepping into a new chapter. We're breaking that down today. How it's not just about others, but also finding peace within ourselves. With me today is Danielle Booher, a remarkable individual who's turned one of life's toughest moments into stepping stones for herself and others. She's a mom, a nurse, and a voice that's lighting the way in the world of healing. Welcome, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Not a problem at all. So, Danielle, it is really an honor to have you here. So I would love it if you could just start out by sharing a little bit about yourself and your journey and the work you do with our audience.
Sure. So I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about the situation. Okay. So well, lots of stuff has happened in my life, but one of the most traumatic things was I was a single mom working 2 jobs. And one morning my mom called me and sorry. And so she said basically that my brother had a gun, and I'll just fast forward. And so she called me to get him to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work. And I ended up witnessing him on the phone commit suicide, and my mom was physically there. And then kind of like everything was like flipped upside down, but I couldn't really give up because of my boys. So I was in nursing school at the time, but just prerequisites, and I was going to quit. And I just said, I don't want to do this. And so thankfully I didn't. They were pretty small and I was the only one to take care of them. So I didn't have a choice. So I kept going. And many other things happened, but it was kind of rough in school just because I had my psych clinicals, and that was very, very hard for me.
Mm.
And so I tried to quit school 3 times. Once I was in the nursing program, and everybody kept telling me the same thing. You have a great heart. You're going to be a great nurse. You can't quit. And they literally did not let me withdraw. And at that point,
Wow.
I had 3 kids that I was raising. And so I kept going and I didn't give up. And fast forward, a long time has gone by. My brother passed away 13 years ago now. And last year I was turning 40. And it got to the point where I started doing all the things I wanted to do. And I went on this forgiveness journey. And so
Mm.
I got certified actually as a life coach in forgiveness and transformation and all these different things. But in that journey, I realized that I had to forgive myself and
Mm.
I had to forgive my brother and all these other things. And so as I did that, I realized that I've always helped people and,
Right.
as a nurse, but I wanted to help them in a different way. So that's basically what really started everything. And it's
Okay.
kind of just grown from there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing that. I can't imagine how hard it is or how hard it was to experience that. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. Before we dive deeper into our conversation, though, we are going to take a very quick commercial break. So stick around. We will be right back.
You have every right to be successful. You have every right to be happy. You have every right to live the life you dream of. But your negative thoughts are holding you back from achieving those things, and it's time to stop listening to them. Sound familiar? If so, then this book is for you. Stop Stopping Your Success, a guided journal to break free from the negative thoughts holding you back from your dreams, is available now on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Or get an author autographed copy at www.stopstoppingyoursuccess.com.
Okay, we are back. Welcome back. I am here with Danielle, and together we are diving deep into the heart of forgiveness. So let's go ahead and get started. So, Danielle, you mentioned just in our intro that you witnessed a deep and very personal trauma of experiencing your brother commit suicide over the phone. Would you share with our audience like how that influenced the path that you're on today?
Well, very greatly, but I didn't even process things for a while. So
Mm-hmm.
I I want to encourage people and help people that and let them see that hopefully they don't take that many years that I did to
Right.
to get to the point, where I just kind of like just went on as a robot or like just kept
Yeah.
going and I was on autopilot. But
Right.
um because of him committing suicide, I've actually have been so empathetic even
Mm.
in my nursing before I decided to do, and I have a podcast as well and I became a life coach, but before I did those things I was I am very empathetic, especially if people have diagnosis of something, or I work in the recovery room, and so the medicine makes people different.
Yeah.
But if they already have something underlying, or they were already anxious, or they were already whatever, then it makes it challenging. And so they might wake up crying or screaming or fighting
Mm.
us. So if they have a diagnosis on their chart, and sometimes people don't, I'm very aware of that, or if they have PTSD. So I suffered from PTSD. So I really empathize with those things. So what I do is I literally am very cautious of things, and I'm very protective of them as well. And so it's like a joke that if somebody has something going on, give them to Danielle, but that's not how we choose who gets a patient. But
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
because I can usually calm people down.
Okay.
And so once the medicine wears off, okay, if you're that has something to do with it. But once the medicine wears off, if I have time to spend with people, they literally open up to me, and I show them that we care about them, not just for their wound or incision or whatever happened with their surgery. And
Right.
so it is very therapeutic for me too, and for them. And it makes people feel like we really care about them as a whole. And so it's helped
It's
me
beautiful.
so much.
Wow. That is beautiful that you're able to reach people. Okay.
Thank you.
So just kind of following up on that, in the aftermath of your brother's suicide, and I think I heard you mention this in the intro, so correct me if I'm wrong. Did you find that forgiveness played a role in your healing? And then who did you have to forgive? Who did you find that you needed to forgive?
Yeah. So again, it took me a long time to kind of figure that part out. But definitely it did. The biggest part of my healing was the forgiveness. There was a lot of other things,
Mm-hmm.
but forgiving myself was really hard because I felt like it was my job to save him. And
Mm,
literally, I was called to basically, I felt like
yeah.
I didn't do my job because I didn't save him. So I was very guilty and all these things. And I had to forgive myself because I realized in getting certified that there's nothing I could have done to
Yeah.
change the outcome. And then also I've been in domestic abuse relationships. I'm still working on forgiving forgiving my son's father. I've done great strides, but and I have a failed
Understood.
marriage, and I have like literally I lost a baby stillborn, so I had to forgive myself for that. I had to forgive my brother because I was like, why did you do that in front of mom? But he wasn't in his right mind. And so that's what I had to realize is that, it gave me a perspective that again helps me be empathetic because I understand that at that point, that was not my brother, that his voice
Right.
was different. Like he was repeating the same things over and over again, and he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
responding to us. And the last words that he heard were mine. And before that gave me a sense of like, ugh, like I was so like upset. But then
Mm-hmm.
when I forgave myself, it gave me a sense of peace that the last
Wow.
words that he heard were positive. And the
Right.
last thing that I said to him or anybody said to him in that moment was that he had a 3-year-old daughter at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and she's now 17. And I said that we all love you and your daughter needs you. I said, Jayla's her name. And then I heard, and so
Mm.
those were the last words that he heard. It wasn't bickering back and forth with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't any of that. It was really sweet, true, like loving words. And so that gave me comfort and peace that he, you know, left the earth hearing those words. So
Right.
that
Right.
helped.
Well, that's so I have a follow-up question
Yeah.
there. When you talk about forgiving your brother, how do you forgive someone who is no longer here? Like, how is that process? How does that work? How did you do that? Like, how does that work?
Because the forgiveness is not for that person. It's for
Mm,
you. It's for you to not be controlled anymore. And that's what was happening. So no matter what happens or who does something to you, like, I mean, even if somebody, it's so heartbreaking, but I've heard people that literally like somebody took their kid's life and murdered them. Okay. but they forgave that person. And then it's for the person that's here. Like, so it's for the mom that lost their child to not be held down by that. And that's the same thing with me, with my brother. Like, yeah, he's not physically here anymore, but I'm not angry. I'm not mad. I mean, there's nothing that I hold against him, and that I knew that his struggle was real, and he had OCD very bad. So I can do things to honor him. So I forgave him, even though he's not here. And now I need to continue his legacy and honor him. So I knew that forgiveness, like, it helped me. I felt so much better after that. Like, after I forgave myself and I forgave him, I was like, okay. And now I can help people. I help people that, maybe their family committed suicide, people that attempted suicide before. Like, I can help people without being weighed down or still reliving that. Like, I don't feel like I have to keep reliving it. So that's really important if you're listening. The forgiveness is for you to move on and for it to not weigh you down and be toxic and just be, it can eat you alive, and it can cause illness in your body. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely can. I like to say that forgiving someone who never apologizes is one of the hardest things to do. But I asked that question because I wanted the listeners out there, if there was someone who maybe in a similar situation, who's pondering, how do I forgive them? I wanted to get since you've had the direct experience, I wanted them to hear that directly from you, because it is very hard to forgive someone who can't apologize or who doesn't apologize. But then recognizing that forgiveness is really and truly for you. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And just to kind of piggyback off something else you said, is that the forgiving yourself, like the importance of that. When I went through my own personal trauma and working through, the healing process, I was the last person that I forgave. And I feel like that's kind of what we do. Like, we somehow, for some reason, if we're gonna forgive, it seems like it's everybody else. And for me, it was a lack of awareness. Like, I didn't realize I needed to forgive myself. Do you have experience with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what happens is, like, that's right. It's like, you're your own biggest critic most of the time. Most people, not everybody. But with me, I am like beat myself up all the time. I'm all these things. Like, I had to forgive myself for apologizing all the time. Let it go and don't do it no more. But
oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then I realized, just a couple days ago, I started saying sorry again a lot. And I was like, no. Because I did it all the time. And everything was sorry. Like, and I didn't realize that I needed to forgive myself, and I have real stuff going on. Okay. And then, like, I help so many people, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, one person said, you have all the answers. Oh, hex to the no, I don't.
Right.
That's not true. But then I have stuff going on with my 22-year-old. Like, my 22-year-old blames me for all these things. And I apologized. I can't change the past. So I have to forgive myself.
Yes.
And then I have to, like, move on. And still, I mean, that's hard. And I'm hoping one day that we have a great relationship. But right now, I try, and then he's getting better with it. So that's all I can do, is be there for him and let him feel whatever he's feeling. But, don't hold that. If I don't think that that's the truth, our truths are different, right? He can have his truth, but I can't beat myself up for something that is, so that's very, very hard. But you're right. Like, forgiving myself last is probably what I did too. It's important though.
It is. It really is, because I feel like that's when, for me personally, that's when the true healing journey began, was when I remember it. And if you've listened to this show before, I've said it before, But I remember standing in my front yard and looking up to the sky and saying, this is it. Like, I finally forgive myself. Like, I've been carrying around all this stuff for so long. I'm ready to let it go. Like, I'm ready to forgive me. And it was literally like a weight was lifted off of me. And the days and weeks and months, since have just been so much easier with that burden of self-blame and the other many things, lifted off. So I kind of wanted to touch on that just because I do want people who are listening to realize that the importance of not leaving yourself behind, not, forgetting to forgive yourself, because that is super duper important.
Yes, I agree.
And so on that topic, if you could go into a little bit more, just could we explore how forgiveness plays a part in healing?
Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, I feel like you can't move on or get past something or heal. Maybe I can't say we heal all the way, because it's a process. So,
Right.
but
yeah,
I feel like you can't heal. It's blocking it, right? So
yes,
it's like a guard at the door, and therefore that whatever you're holding, okay, so you're holding anger or guilt, shame, sadness, whatever. And once you forgive, like you said, it's like the weight comes off your shoulders, and then you can move forward and heal. But if you let all those things control you and you cannot move forward, that stuff, that person, that situation, whatever it is literally winning. Okay. Think of it as a game. So they're winning and you're not, because you're stuck in that moment and you're stagnant. As soon as you forgive and you let those things go, it doesn't mean that it's okay what they did. It's not okay what they said. It's not okay what happened, whatever the case may be. Or even for yourself, maybe you did something like so, out of this world that you're like, what in the world? But it doesn't mean that those things are acceptable, or you're saying it's okay, you hurt me. No, what it means is that I'm not going to let these things burden me anymore. Once you let that door, there's a guard, it's gone. You let it go. Now you're free to go through the door. Boop.
Yes.
You go through the door, and now you can move on, and now you can heal, and now you can reflect on things without feeling those things. So now, say, for instance, I broke my tooth when I went to a restaurant. Okay. And so now I'm like, it's the restaurant's fault, and I will not go past the restaurant. I won't go in the restaurant. I boycott the restaurant, all these things. But then now I'm like, well, that's pretty silly. It's been 10 years of me hating this restaurant. I'm going to let it go. So I forgive. I don't care. And now every time I go past the restaurant, I'm not angry anymore. I don't care about it. I don't even know I'm going past the restaurant. Doesn't even bother me. So
it's taking away all that energy, that extra energy you were
right.
spending. Yeah.
It's like, don't let the thing or the person or the whatever control you. And once you gain back that control, then you can focus on yourself. You can focus on the future. You can focus on healing. But I feel like that always, that's going to cause a hindrance, and it's going to, it's like putting weights on you. So could I run up the hill faster with 200 pounds of weights on me? That's the shame, guilt, anger, all that stuff. No, not me.
Right. No, not me either.
Or could I let that stuff go, cut it off, the weights go, and then I run up the hill fast? Still probably couldn't myself, but other people, they can run up the hill fast.
It'll be a struggle.
And so without that stuff holding you down, and think of it that way, like, do you want to be pulled down to the bottom of the ocean, or do you want to be able to go to the surface and cut the cord? That's right. So that's how you can heal. That's just my opinion. That's what happened with me. I didn't realize how much I was holding on to things, or how much I was being triggered or whatever by so many things, because like I thought I was fine. And then all of a sudden I went through the process of forgiveness and was like, holy moly, I was not fine. was not. So, I mean, I think it helps greatly with healing. I think it's not the only way to heal, but it's one of the
It's a
main
start.
ways to heal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a start. I would definitely say, because where I know me personally, where I failed was I felt like I was supposed to heal everybody. I mean, not heal, forgive. Sorry, wrong word. I was supposed to forgive everybody else. Like, basically based on the way I've been taught, you forgive people, right? And it was like, okay, I'm going to forgive. And, honestly, I used to be a person that says, I don't do forgiveness. Like, I'm not forgiving anybody. Then there was this whole thing where I learned, for not forgiving other people could affect my path to heaven. And I was not up for that. So I'm like, okay, let's do this forgiveness thing. And it was like, okay, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive. And it was like, I was ready to throw out the forgiveness, but I was still so weighed down because I hadn't done it for myself. And that definitely is what changes it. So I definitely feel like I feel like you can try forgiving everybody else, but if you don't forgive yourself, you're still, like you said, you're still weighed down. You're carrying around the guilt, the shame, and all those heavy things. You're carrying it around with you. And you brought up a couple of other things that I kind of wanted to touch on. You talked about, what like forgiveness, what it doesn't mean, right? So many people struggle with that concept of forgiveness because they feel like it means forgetting or condoning. How do you define forgiveness in the work that you do?
So that is a great question. Let's see if I can come up with it. No, so I guess I do a lot of work, but I think that define forgiveness. So I think basically, like we said, and it's not necessarily letting anything go, definitely, because it's always you can still think about it, but not
Right.
forgiveness to me is not letting it invoke emotion. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So for instance, like I didn't forget it because
Right.
I know that, my ex-boyfriend used to beat me. He did, right? I didn't forget that.
Right.
But when I think of it now, I don't feel like I did. I don't feel like I'm that person like getting beat again. I don't get sucked into it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's basically to me is forgiveness. Like I forgive you for doing that to me. Like if I saw him, I wouldn't want to like, punch him in the, I'm just joking. I'm silly. Punch him in the nose. But you know what I'm saying? It doesn't evoke
Yeah.
emotion like it did. Like
Yes.
before, or even talking about my brother dying, like I literally would sob, like
Mm-hmm.
sob. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I still do
Yeah.
when I talk about his daughter because she's 3 and she's amazing. And she is fighting for mental health at 17 years old. She is speaking up for suicide prevention at 17 years old. She is
Beautiful.
amazing. But anyway, so
Beautiful.
like sometimes I tear up thinking about her because she's here and
Mm-hmm.
she, hasn't had her dad almost her whole life. So, but, I think forgiveness is again not letting it weigh you down. So I talk about
Yeah.
that a lot with my clients or like even at work as a nurse. I shouldn't probably talk about it, but I do. If I have the
Yeah.
patient for hours, I talk to them. And in the book that I just wrote, it's important too. So it's just a main thing of life because it allows you to, again, you didn't forget, but you
Yes.
can move past that situation to where you don't get triggered every time you see whatever it is. Again, you remember, but it's not invoking the emotion of like, I'm scared and like I'm a little girl and this happened to me because that's
Mm-hmm.
sad. Childhood stuff is
Yes.
really hard to get past and you don't realize how much it
Yes.
comes up and so many things that happen to you. It just triggers it. But you get to the point where you're like, okay, that's, the fact that I didn't have food. This one nurse was like, they
Yeah.
didn't feed me every day. They didn't feed me. What in the world? And she remembers that when she was 4.
Mm-hmm.
But now she has an eating disorder. She binge eats because she
Mm.
wasn't allowed to have food. And so I
Mm.
talked to her at work and didn't even know this was going to happen. And then all of a sudden she realized that the two were tied together. And so now
Wow.
she's working on it. She's doing amazing. And so
Wow.
you don't understand, like, and she forgave. I'm like, you've got to forgive. I know it's hard because her mom's still alive and her mom was the
Mhm.
one doing that to her. And
Wow.
so she's now able to have a more healthy relationship with food. And so I'm so proud of her, but that's what it's about, is like, it's not forgetting, but now every time I, get food, I don't think I'm never going to have it again. And I'm not going to
Right.
have to like take it,
Hold it.
because that's what happens, is that she's
Yes.
reverting back to her childhood. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's a long answer. Sorry, but that's what
No, it's great.
yeah.
Honestly, this is what I heard, and you can tell me if I sum it up pretty good, is that the way you define forgiveness is the difference between being stuck and being able to move forward.
Yeah, I
That
like
sound
that.
good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Great. I mean, I was hearing everything that you were saying, and that's
Thank you.
kind of what I heard there. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing it. Honestly, I think the in-depth explanation is good because we just don't know where our listeners are. So, let's give them whatever we got. So,
Yeah.
so in your own healing process, Danielle, and in the work that you do with your clients and others, even, your coworkers and the people at the hospital, how do you approach that initial conversation around a traumatic experience?
That's really hard. So I think just being a genuine person, not to
Mhm.
talk like so good about myself, but just people know that I'm a safe space. So
Mhm.
sometimes I don't even say anything. Like I didn't know that was going to come up with her. We were working and she just
Right.
started talking about it. And so I think like it's been a blessing that the questions just kind of come up and I just let people say whatever. And then like, or if, say for instance, they say I hate whatever, and I'm like, oh, well, why do you think that is, or whatever, and then I kind of
Mhm.
just kind of
Mhm.
spark a little thing. And so that way people open up, and it's such a hard thing to talk about. Any kind of trauma or
Yeah.
anything you witnessed or anything like that is so difficult. So I just kind of let people, you don't push people ever, because
Right.
that makes them like literally that triggers you a lot. I mean, that's not fair. You don't want to do that. So you allow people to open up as well as they can. And then for my clients, I kind of just tell them like, so I do grief and trauma. So if it's related to grief, I have a client we were supposed to be talking about grief, but we literally talk about everything in her life, what's going on with her husband, her kids, and all that stuff, and making that um a good unit. And then everything else will kind of fall in line. And then
Right.
sometimes the grief stuff comes up. But I think when it comes to talking about those things, it's so sensitive that you have to
Yeah.
respect the person and respect the boundaries. And also, if you're the person talking about it, set boundaries.
Mm.
I'm, for instance, I'll just talk about you, Harriet.
Go
You
for
asked,
it.
yeah, you asked in the, which is something I don't do on my podcast because I do not give people a form, but you asked on the form, is there anything you're not comfortable talking about? There you
Mhm.
go. That's a wonderful thing to do. So that's the thing, is that you are giving people the respect of
Yes.
saying, this is too much for me right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's a great thing that you did. And so anybody that somebody comes up to you and they say, like, unfortunately, there's people like this one lady at work, her son just got murdered maybe 3-4 months ago. And a few months before that, one of our coworkers, her nephew and her sister got murdered at the same time. So what do you say, right? We just allow them
Yeah.
to come. So what I did for the one, because I was like kind of new at work when the person it happened with the sister and the nephew, but the person that just lost her son, she was out of work, of course, for a while, but when she came back, I let her I just saw her and hey, we acted like everything was fine. And then one day I said, I would really like to get you something. And she's like, okay. And so I talked to her and I said, I have a website. There's free resources on it. You don't have, nobody knows you're looking at it. Please click on it whenever you need. And so she's a tough person. She thinks that, you know, she has to hold it down for everyone. She has several other kids and all this stuff. And so, but what I did was I got her a book, and I also got it for my mom too. And that's what I'm a gift giver. So I got her this book, and it's called Letters to My Son in Heaven or something like that. And so it has helped my mom greatly. She never talked about my brother, the whole situation for 13 years. Because it was traumatic for her, of course.
Right.
And so imagine. Yeah, thank you. But my friend that lost her son, I got her that book as well. And so I said, you don't have to talk to me about anything, but I want you to know that this is for you. And so I gave her that, and I gave her this other book. And so that's something you can do as well. If people aren't ready to talk, you can give them resources, or just be there and listen when they are. So don't ever feel like forcing somebody isn't the right thing, because I feel like that's just going to scare them off. But you know,
I agree.
Yeah. So with my clients, like, if I know that we're going to talk about something, I let them set their own goals. What are your goals? And then when they tell me their goals, we work on it. If something is too much for them, then we can move on. They can write it down. Oh, I wanted to say that. Please write things down. So you don't know sometimes what is bothering you or why something is bothering you until it is literally written down and you read it out loud and you go,
that is good.
Yeah. And you're like, holy moly. Like, that's what happened to me. So I started doing the forgiveness stuff, and I'm writing stuff down. I'm like, ooh. And then I started writing a book, and I was like, that happened. And stuff just started coming up. And it's about my trauma, different trauma that happened to me. And I was like, oh my. So that gives you a sense of like, oh, the reality, right? So sometimes we're responsible for things that happen to us, and we don't even realize it either. But that's why we have to forgive ourselves. And so reading it and seeing it, that helps you move forward. But that's again, I go on a tangent, but
no, you're good. And honestly, I want to just kind of say, the whole writing it down, like, I have found so much power in that just recently. Like, I've always kind of been a journaler, but never a consistent journaler. And I have found there is so much power and peace in true understanding, because when I take the time and I'm quietly sitting in that space, and the thoughts begin to come, and they come more and more. And then it's almost like this puzzle of, like, I'm writing it down and I'm also solving a puzzle that has been bugging or, just bothering me for, it could be months, it could have been years, it could have been decades, who knows? But I'm starting to get these revelations of, oh my gosh. And it's the consistency. It's the consistency of trying to really deep dive into my thoughts. And so I think that's super important. So thank you for sharing that and pointing that out.
Yeah.
So I've got one more question for you.
Sure.
And that is, what advice would you give someone who has experienced trauma, in whatever capacity, and they're struggling to forgive themselves? What advice would you give them?
I might cry on this. The advice that I would give you is that you are worthy. So I'm going to try not to cry. You are worthy, and I want you to never give up. Okay. So, know that you deserve to move on and to live a happy, fulfilled life, and that regardless, you cannot go back and change it. So no matter what you are so upset with yourself about, or thinking like, okay, so I had the woulda, shoulda, couldas, those things, right? So I did. Like, what if I did this? Or what if I would have called the cops? What if this? What if I lived in Maryland still? Because I didn't. I did not live in Maryland anymore. They were in Maryland. I was in Ohio. What if this? What if blah, blah, blah?
Yes.
There's nothing I could have done, right? So realize that you're loved and you're worthy and you deserve to be free of whatever is bogging you down, all that stuff again, the guilt, the shame, the anger, the sadness, the whatever. You can't change what happened, but you can learn from it. And once you forgive yourself and learn from it, then just try to ensure that you don't do the same thing again. And we all make mistakes. Remember that. When you're struggling to forgive yourself, remember that we all make mistakes. And if you're a victim of something, please don't blame yourself. I know sometimes that, in society, women are like, well, people say, oh, if she didn't do this or didn't wear this or didn't go here. No, no. You don't deserve that. Okay. Please do not ever blame yourself for something that you didn't have control of. So if you couldn't control a situation, that's what you need to do. You need to please forgive yourself and then focus on the things that you can control. You can control how you feel about it. You can control what you do from now on. So that's the most important thing I can tell you. And is that you are loved and I love you and you're important and you deserve to be forgiven by yourself. You have to. Please do it. Do it for yourself.
Do it for yourself. I love that. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much for that. That was a beautiful response. And I really hope our listeners took that in. If not, y'all stop it, pause it, rewind it back and listen to that again, because that was beautiful. And it's so true, because you are worthy and you should never give up. So thank you. So guys, we're going to take another brief pause. We'll be right back to wrap up today's episode.
Want a chance to win exclusive You Are Not Your Trauma merch? Here's how. Leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform and share your thoughts with us. It helps us reach more listeners who may also be seeking healing and growth. Once you left your feedback, visit feedback.youarenotyourtrauma.com to let us know you've entered by entering your info and the word feedback in the message section. You could be a lucky winner. Now stay tuned for today's inspiring episode, and thank you for being a part of the You Are Not Your Trauma community.
Okay, we are back. So Danielle, I just want to thank you for sharing today. Like, the stories you shared, your insights, they have been incredibly moving. And I cannot thank you enough for opening up and sharing your journey here with us on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. Now, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yes, I would like to say what I say in my one podcast. So I wrapped the intro, which is fun. Fun fact. And the last line of it is, don't ever give up, because you got this. If you quit, think of all the opportunities that you could miss. So that's
you got to wrap it. You got to wrap it. You got to wrap it. You couldn't tell me that and not wrap it. Come on.
Here's the whole thing, but it's like 1 minute. Okay. So it goes like this. My one podcast is Authentic Points of View. So it goes, we're all full of authentic points of view. Myself alone have at least 22. It comes from the things that we have been through. Those things can either make or break you. Life is full of ups and downs. It's our choice to either smile or frown. Please choose to smile today, because it's one thing that's free to give away. People say that life isn't hard. It's what you make of it. But what if only struggle surrounds you? What can you take from it? Life could be hard and some things aren't fair. Please listen to others just to be aware. All I'm saying, you never know what someone's going through. Just because they look happy doesn't make it true. Hopefully this podcast will help you see you are not alone. You at least got me. We are more alike than you may know. And if you stay quiet, we will never grow. Never give up, because you got this. If you quit, think of all the opportunities that you could miss. I haven't done that in so long.
And you nailed it. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
gosh.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, not only have you given us great insights, you have rapped for us. So that, y'all, I am not rapping. Let me just go ahead and say that.
No, that was not, that wasn't even, there was no beat. How fun.
It was great. It was great. Thank you. I do appreciate you so much for coming on the
You're
show
welcome.
and for sharing and rapping for us today. You have definitely given us a lot to think about. And I definitely appreciate it. Now, a little challenge for our listeners. I want you to answer this question. How has forgiveness touched your life? And I want you to share your experiences with us using the hashtag healing through forgiveness. And be sure to tag You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And you can tag us on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and, just do a video, wrap the video, let's do. But just remember that your share could help someone else. And I truly look forward to seeing, hearing, or, watching your inspiring stories. Now, as we wrap up this episode, let's remember that forgiveness is the key to unlocking the chains of the past. It is a gift to yourself, and it is a promise of peace. So hold on to that as you move forward. And I want to thank each and every one of you again for tuning in to this week's episode of You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please don't forget to share it with someone who can benefit from the information that's been shared. Also, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Check out the website, www.youarenotyourtrauma.com, to leave feedback, request to be a guest on the show, subscribe to the show, get information on show guests, or to get information about advertising on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. You can connect with You Are Not Your Trauma podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And if you have a story to share, please email me at contact@harrietmharris.com. Until next time, please remember, you are not your trauma.